let's add a little bit more context to my Vedic astrology analysis on Zohran Mamdani. So just to be clear, Mercury retrograde means revisiting, going back in the past, but Mercury in general has to do with decisions, has to do with documentations, has to do with all forms of communications, has to do with technology. Being that Mercury retrograde is taking place in Zohran Mamdani's 5th house from his ascendant and 11th house from his moon, suggests that for 5th house represents our blessings, our rewards, our wins, right? It's also the house of speculation, it's also the house of children, and it's also the house of creative expression. So when we look at the 5th house and we couple it with Mercury retrograde, this has to do with documentation, right? Documentation, some kind of paper that awards him something, some kind of documentation that awards him a title, because Mercury also represents our title, our position in our career. So being that it is going retrograde in his 5th house, it suggests that his win is being reviewed. His paperwork, right? Because the blessing is that he came to the United States, he's lived here for so many years, but now there's a review. And how do I look at this even deeply? Well, first off, Mars is also in Scorpio, where Mercury is about to go retrograde. And if we look to natal Mars, because Mars rules Scorpio, we see that his natal Mars is in the 4th house, right? This has to do with home. This has to do with residency. 4th house is home, residency, and happiness. If we're looking at it from his moon, this has to do with his career. So being that it's in a semi-sextile relationship, this suggests some kind of sacrifice, possibly some kind of loss taking place, or having to give something up in order for something to take place. Now, I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but just follow me here. So Mercury is going to square his natal Jupiter, which is in the 8th house from the moon, the 2nd house from his ascendant. And it's also going to square Venus, which is the 2nd house from the ascendant and the 8th house from his moon. So if we're looking at it, because we could always, in Vedic astrology, you make predictions from ascendant, you make predictions from the moon, and it still comes out correct, right? So we know that from Jupiter from his ascendant is his 6th house, which is work, his job, and 9th house it rules, which is long distance travels. So there is a connection between documentation, his work, okay, papers, his working papers, also has to do with law, has to do with naturalization, right, here in the United States. And Venus has to do with his dreams, his goals, but also rules the 4th house. So all of this is being reviewed. Now, what some people don't get is squares suggest conflict and action that needs to be taken. So when you have Mercury retrograde aspecting these planets, that means there's some action that's going to be taken. There's something that's going to be reviewed. It's going to be a conflict, because when you look at the aspect of Mars, right? Mars will aspect 4th houses from itself, 7 houses from itself, and 8 houses from itself. And if you notice, Mars rules the 1st house and the 8th house of the natural zodiac, which has to do with self, but 8th house is also transformation. So that means something is about to change here. So taking a little step back and looking at all of this from his moon, we know that Jupiter rules the 12th house of loss and secrets, right? The house of undoing. And we know that also Jupiter rules the 3rd house from the moon. And that is your identity, your signature, your position, in life. It also rules documentation. In this case, because he is born from another country, this could indicate documentation, having to do from another country coming here, the ability to be a legal citizen, all right? And if we look at Venus, Venus rules the 5th house from the moon, and it also rules the 10th house from the moon. Now, the 5th house is a house of blessings, winnings, creativity, film, right? Creative habits and stuff like that. It's fun stuff that you've done in the past, good times, right? and blessings. I think I mentioned that one before. And 10th house is our career, our position in the public. So all of this is going to be reviewed. But the fact that he has his Jupiter and Venus both in the 8th house from the moon, that means that there is some kind of transformation that's going to be taking place. Okay, some kind of scandal, some kind of loss due to what? Because of the activation from the Mercury retrograde, which means looking at paperwork, looking at things from the past. So it's no surprise to me that this whole dream or idea of him being a New York City mayor may actually just fall through. It's very possible he could be disqualified. It's very possible that, but look, it takes time. You have to go to court and, prove all these things. But it's very possible that, even if he becomes mayor, it will be short-lived. So it's almost like the way the planets are being set up, it looks like an exit. So don't forget though, that K2, the planet of detachment, the planet of loss, and sometimes suffering, is going to conjunct his Venus and Jupiter. So that means he's going to be detached from some opportunity, detached from his career, detached from this new position, detached from his home possibly. Something's about to brew. And I was trying to explain that astrologically in my other video, but I felt that because of some of the questions that I was receiving via DMs and in the background, it wasn't very clear. And I apologize because I'm an astrologer and sometimes, things will make sense to me, but I forget that I have to explain things in a little bit more plain English. And look, I don't make up these charts. I didn't decide on what day and time he was going to be born, what location he was going to be born in. I'm just interpreting the planets, the degrees, the signs that they're in, all based on the day, the time, the location that he was born. To me, it really does not matter, not even this much, whether or not he is mayor. It doesn't matter to me. What does matter is being able to analyze the charts accurately so that other people are learning and understand that there is real relationship between what's happening in real life and what's happening in the sky. Now, if you'd like a personal Vedic astrology reading, you can message me at astrodevi333 or go to astrodevi.com where you can book your own personal Vedic astrology reading. Now, I know some of you are wondering what's going to go on with New York City. I'm going to leave that for another video, but make sure to follow me so that way you can find out what's going on when I do post the video. Until then, don't get caught up in the drama. Focus more on your inner self, personal development. That's what Vedic astrology is for, to help you develop yourself. It's not just about making predictions. It's really about learning who you are on the inside out and learning how to create a better life for yourself, one that you're going to feel proud of, one that you're going to enjoy, one that's going to give you more power.